I want to welcome everybody tonight to our weekly agent training call. I do know we're going to have some folks that are going to be jumping in as the call progresses, and that's fine. We always appreciate when you're here. We are going to have a recording of this. I'm creating a part of the maneuverfinancial.com website where we can start posting all of our past meetings. So you guys will be able to kind of go back there and watch them. I'm trying to set them up with tags so you can search by them. That's going to take a while, but we are in the process of doing that. So if you have not been to the maneuverfinancial.com website, I would strongly suggest you go there. 3 sections on that website. You've probably seen them, but we just added another 5 videos to the consumer education part of the site. So lots of tools out there now for consumer education and obviously for agent education as well up at maneuverfinancial.com. What we're going to look at tonight, however, so this is in the sales skills module, which is after steps 1, 2, and 3 in onboarding. And this is actually in step 4. And this is the second topic inside of step 4, the second lesson, if you will, labeled Completing the Sales Cycle Overview. So there's a video that I recorded previously on this subject. I have done some upgrades, and that's really what tonight is about, is to cover what those upgrades are. But contained within that step, you'll see downloading the sales cycles by call. We're going to be looking at that in a minute. Downloading the CSAR form, which is actually an Excel spreadsheet. And also downloading, it's got a new name. It's called Completing a Client Application, which is a sequence of steps. And that's what we're going to be concentrating on tonight. Okay, so this is our sales cycle. Okay, it's fairly simple. This is our basic sales cycle. Okay, so the first thing you got to do is get a lead. Now you can buy them. You can, get them from a mom group perhaps, or you can get them because somebody in the mom group knew somebody. The bottom line is you got to get a lead. Okay, once you have the lead, then you have to reach out and connect with that lead, which means again you can do it in person or you can do it on the phone. We talked last week about how to build rapport with that prospect and why it's so important to do that. And as Kevin so frequently says, if you can get them laughing, you're going to have a better connection with them. Okay. And then what that whole first conversation really is all about is trying to determine why they are looking for life insurance and determining their life insurance needs and determining their medical history, because all of those things are going to play a role in that process. And so as we go through that process, we will be filling out something called the CQF, or the Client Qualification Form. But basically your job as you talk to the client is to gather all of this information. Now, for the most part in the beginning, we're just going to kind of go line by line. When you get more practiced with this, what you'll do is just have conversations with the client and they will be revealing information which you will be tracking down in the different boxes that are here on the CQF form. One of the big things that I like to collect is their children, the ages of the children, and their grandkids and the ages of their grandkids. Why? Because those are instant and easy referrals. Referrals, of course, are leads you don't pay for with money. You pay for with kindness and service. Okay. And then you get into the occupational information on the CQF. And I'm not going to go over this whole form line by line, but make sure a couple of things. When you are collecting medication information, make sure you capture when they started taking it and what its purpose is. Find out when their most recent stay was in the hospital. Big emphasis. If they say they have some sort of medical condition, you absolutely need to find out when it started, i.e., did they have an episode or was it diagnosed? Did they receive any treatments for it? And when the treatments stopped. Okay, because when the treatment stops, that starts a clock on an insurance application when the application will say, in the last 5 years, have they had this problem? And if you go back 4 years and 11 months, you're going to have to wait a month to fill in an application. So when they stopped being treated for the condition is a very, very important date. Now, if they're still being treated for it, just make sure you make note of that. Okay. In your diabetes, what age were they when they were diagnosed is going to be a knockout answer for some of our insurance carriers. If they're diagnosed before the age of 40, some carriers won't underwrite them. If they're diagnosed after the age of 40, but before the age of 50, it's a problem for some carriers. Okay. Generally, this is going to be referring to type 2 diabetes. You got to find out whether or not they're on insulin, what their last A1C reading is, and whether or not they're on medications. And super important, do they have any complications? Because if they have, like I do, diabetic neuropathy, which problems with my feet, well, I'm pretty much out of the opportunity to get insurance at this stage of my life because of my diabetic neuropathy. It's almost a knockout for most carriers. Okay. If they have high blood pressure, another thing we learned the other day in talking with an agent is how many medications are they taking for high blood pressure? If they're taking one, they're usually okay. If they're taking two, they're okay for most carriers, but not for some. And if they're taking three, they're likely not going to get any term products with any carrier, which also means they won't get any IUL products either. And then obviously, if we're calling for mortgage information, you're going to want to collect all of that. And at the very bottom of the form are kind of the two most important boxes on here. Number one is, whom are you protecting? What we're going for here is the emotional tie down, or the reason they're looking for coverage. Whom are they trying to protect, and what do you want this to do for you? Now, I was talking with an agent the other day, and they said, "Man, I don't want to make them, nervous or emotional and all that. They'll feel like I'm being manipulated." And I couldn't disagree more. What you want to do when you're trying to do an emotional tie down is you're trying to get them to access their emotions, because nobody intellectually wants to buy life insurance. But if there's a compelling reason, they will buy life insurance every single time. So your goal in this first conversation is to fill out as much of this CQF as you possibly can.
But I do have one other thing I want to throw in, Mike, when you were going through. When you got the CQF, one thing we never talk about, but me, Mike, Ryan, Les, all you guys have probably ran into this. When a client's got something on their MIB, which is their medical information, 9 times out of 10, it's because the doctors haven't updated their portion of it. It's supposed to be automatic. It's supposed to be seamless. It doesn't always work that way. So if you've got a client, just make sure as you're going through that, tell them, hey, reach out to their provider and make sure that their information is updated, and tell them why. And then another reason is if they know they've got an appointment, ask them to have the doctor to pull up a list of all the medications that they're on, because they can get denied because it's showing them on a medication that the doctor said, oh, you don't need this anymore. Then to keep in your back pocket, try to remember that.
You can also direct the client to, is it MIB.com, I think, for the Medical Information Bureau? Excuse me. They can get an access to their medical report. Yeah. This is the Symmetry underwriting cheat sheet, which is also in the course. The link for it is in there, but I want to show you specifically what we were looking at with somebody the other day. And basically what this does is has a list of medical conditions on the left-hand column and all of our carriers along the top. Okay, so if we go down here to high blood pressure, so you're just scrolling down, it's row 91. But for example, with American Amicable's express term policy, if the person is on 2 high blood pressure medications, they're going to be approved if that's their only condition. However, If one of those two medications is a diuretic, they're going to get declined.
Wow.
So you see why knowing exactly what meds they're on and what they're for becomes extremely important. Right? Now, if we scroll to the right, just to show you some different things, and we look at Forrester's strong foundation term policy, if they're on one or two meds and it is controlled, then they'll be accepted. If they're on 3 medications, you're going to have to dig into the agent guide, and you're going to have to do a high blood pressure questionnaire, which is an extra form. If, however, they're on only 1 medication, but it's a diuretic, they're going to get declined. Right? So what you'll find is when people have high blood pressure is if it's 1 meds and under control, they're probably good for everything. If they're 2 meds, they're probably okay as long as it's not a diuretic. What you'll also find is that they're likely going to be approved for whole life and a final expense product, but they're not likely to be approved for term coverage. And also bear in mind that oftentimes IUL uses the same underwriting as term. Okay, so again, I don't want to go over this sheet in detail. I just want to show you that as you're filling out the CQF, like if somebody has liver disease, they're pretty much not going to get anything. Unless they might be able to get an American Amicable Dignity Solutions whole life final expense product. If it was diagnosed within 2 years, it'll be a return of premium. And if it was diagnosed within 3, it'll be a little better at a graded. Okay, and of course, if you scroll all the way to the right, there's no issues with AIG or Corebridge's guaranteed issue whole life because they don't ask any medical questions.
So in order for us to know if they're diuretics or not, we just have to like Google each medication. Is that how it goes?
Yeah, well, you can ask the client as well. Usually they'll know if they're on a diuretic or not. And yes, you'll learn over time how to do these conversations with the client and have Google open and go type. Is HCTZ a diuretic? And then you'll know. And then, of course, after you do that once or twice, you won't have to look it up anymore. I would say, and Raynor, back me up on this, that in all of the times you'll be doing CQFs, it's probably 20 meds or less that you'll see 80% of the time. Does that ring true for you?
True, but I will also say, Michael, that HCTZ is one of the mildest diuretics that treat hypertension and high blood pressure. So
Yes,
for
sir.
them to say it's a decline, I am amazed because most doctors put you on 12.5 hydrochlorothiazide at the first sign that your blood pressure is elevating.
Yeah, isn't that like a super generic one, right? They don't put you on that hard stuff because there's some stuff out there that's really, which is, I'm amazed that they're saying 2 medications is accept, but if it's a diuretic, it's a decline. I'm amazed at that.
Well, my suggestion, we'll get to whoever just spoke here in a minute ago, in a moment, is look, if you have questions on this, guys, what do? You pick up the phone and you call the carrier.
You call the carrier,
to the underwriting department. Okay, now you don't do that when you're on the phone with the client. We'll talk about when you might need to do that, but I'm just telling you to raise your awareness of what's available and what your conditions are. So when you're filling the CQF out, you can kind of prep the client accordingly and or get the information that you need.
Right.
Well, if you go to the top of the spreadsheet, right at the very top are all the phone numbers for the carriers.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 right there. Now, what you can also do is print these out on a separate piece of paper so they're handy, but they are all right there, right? So all the ones that are AMAM, columns B through F, of course, all have the same phone number.
Yeah.
Now, what's unique with AMAM is now they do this through chat. Okay, and we're kind of getting a little off track, but I just wanted you to know that this is here. Okay, and that this is going to be a part of the underwriting process when you're filling out that CQF. Okay. So in that lesson, okay, that sales cycle lesson, This is the list of 12 steps that you will take when you're successfully working with a client. Now, don't let the number be daunting to you because it's broken down in stages, just like that sales cycle page, right? The sales cycles page said to have a first contact with the client to build rapport and find out their why. Use the Symmetry underwriting cheat sheet. And by the way, this is linked. So when you're just getting started, you can have this open. And then when you're off that phone call and the CQF is done, then the agent will research the best solutions for the client's situation using that CSAR, the Client Solution Analysis Form. There's a separate lesson in the course that talks about how to use that, okay? Then what you're going to do is you're going to put together your options. And the next step is you're going to have the solution appointment. In that conversation, you're going to reinforce their why and just say, now, before we get started, Ms. Jones, can you tell me again why this was so important to you? Well, I want to make sure my daughter, can stay in the house. Okay. And does she have family that's living with her? She does. Okay. And how long have y'all been in the house, right? Again, you want to generate that emotional component again. And then generally what we recommend is you present between 1 to 3 solutions to the client. Now, there are agents out there that say, I just submit the best one according to my opinion. I personally prefer presenting 3 solutions at 3 different price points so the client can then decide which solution is most affordable for them. And I don't go like 50, 100 to 150. Okay, I'll go like 50, 75 to 100. Because trust me, if they want more, they will ask you. But the goal is to get them to pick a solution that solves their problem, satisfies their why, in an amount that they can keep paying. That's a good decision that they've made. All right. And then in the course of that conversation, when you present those 3 options, what you're striving to do is to gain agreement. Once you've got that agreement, all that's left is all about the application. See, first contact, filling out the CQF, using the underwriting cheat sheet, developing your solutions, presenting to the client, and then all this rest of this stuff is just about filling out the application. So you're going to fill out the application together with the client. You're going to read the questions on the applications to the client so they answer them in full. Here's a big, big, giant hint. If you declare it, even if it's a problem, you can still oftentimes get approved. If you don't declare it, you will almost never get approved, simply because you didn't declare it. So work with your clients to learn as much about them and about their medical history and their medical challenges and their pharmaceutical regimen, because all that stuff gets included on the application, and then you're more likely to get an approval. So the agent will submit the application to the carrier. And again, all this nowadays is done electronically. Okay. And then once you do that, then you're going to input that application back into Opt so that Symmetry now knows you've written an application. You're going to download a copy of that signed application. I like to give that signed application to the client so they have a chance to look at it all. And of course, you're going to put it into Opt as part of that process. And then the carrier goes to work. Now, there are 3 ways things get approved around here. Way number 1 is an instant decision. That means when you're on the phone with the client in that second solution appointment, the carrier will give you an answer. Yes, they're covered, or we're going to move them into simple underwritten, which means humans have to look at it, or it's going to be declined. And so for policies like the new Americo Instant Decision IUL, you're going to have an answer before you get off the phone with the client. And if it's a no, then in that case, you simply will more than likely roll them over to the F&G application and resubmit it while you're on the phone with the client. Okay. Numbers are going to be a little different. Cost will be a little different, but hopefully that's still an option. Okay. Okay. And if they aren't going to get approved with an instant decision, they're unlikely to get approved with a simple underwritten overnight anyway. You're probably going to have to go with a fully underwritten. Okay. So instant decisions while you're on the phone, simple underwritten, usually 24 to 48 hours later, fully underwritten, usually about a week to 2 weeks, sometimes months, if they have trouble getting medical records from their primary care physicians or their referred specialists. Now, once the policy is issued, then you need to have a conversation with the client to lock down the sale. That means you're reinforcing the reason you did it. Okay, you're emailing them a copy of their policy, and you're assisting them in creating their online portal access to the carrier so that if they have payment issues, they can fix this themselves. Okay, and you are having a conversation and you're trying to get on the phone with the policy beneficiaries. Why are you doing that? Well, it's excellent customer service, but more importantly, when your insured person dies, you want the beneficiaries to have already spoken with you so you can help them. Fill out the death claim paperwork, get it submitted properly, walk it through the process with the client. They're far more likely to buy life insurance from you if you help them with mom's policy. Okay, so this is the long-term view of your business. Okay, and then we also want to ask our client for referrals. Okay, so let me jump out of this and let's take a look again at what we just did in those 11 steps. We obtain the lead. We have a conversation with the prospect, determining their whys, filling out the CQF. We do our research with our underwriting spreadsheet. We then present the solutions. I forgot to mention, we suggest bundles of products, adding on things like a critical illness rider to their life insurance policy or a guaranteed advantage Mutual of Omaha accident only policy as a rider to their policy, because that way when they have multiple policies, they're more likely to keep them. The client chooses the solution. You then complete the application. In that process, hopefully you can get referrals then or ask them to think about it. And then once the policy's issued, you're locking down the sale upon approval, and then hopefully getting new leads and repeating this process. Like the shampoo bottles say, lather, rinse, and repeat. Okay. First call, filling out the CQF. Then you're doing research. Then you're presenting the solutions. They're making a choice. You're filling out the application and you're locking down the sale. And then you're starting over with the next referral. First contact, generally 10 to 15 minutes. Second conversation, generally 30 minutes if they're saying no, 60 minutes if they're saying yes, could be longer. Depends on the application you're filling out. Okay, the lockdown sale, 5 to 10 minutes plus the time it takes to get referrals. Because you not only want to get referrals, you want to get referrals and have a conversation with the client about the client calling the referrals before you do. And again, there's a whole lesson in our course about referrals and whatever thing I've just forgotten that you're going to remind me of.
Okay, so you've got those three things, right? And this is the only reason I'm going to bring this up, because this happened to Mike 2 or 3 weeks ago. All right. You've got a client. You're trying to get them into, you want them to have the best policy they can have. And as long as I've known this gentleman, he can't stand these policies when they're graded. All right. That is the time while you're waiting. If you see they're denied, they're going to get denied, do not hesitate. Go ahead and fill out the other apps. I mean, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
Put in a guaranteed issue or a health policy. Mike called that guy back, or the guy never showed up for an appointment. That's what it was, wasn't it, Mike?
Yep.
It turned out the guy had got murdered. So in that time frame of that 2-week period, life-changing events happen to all of us. And when you're using that, use me. I mean, we all have stories, but I had an insurance policy on my daughter for years. Never, I forgot I even wrote it on. And when she died, I was like, it took me 5 years to remember I even had it. You know, because I'm the agent, you know, so ain't nobody gonna call me. And I just never thought about it. So you know, we all have life-changing events. Just it's not a matter of taking advantage of them. It's using every tool in your toolkit to protect somebody. Because no matter how you may feel inside, I promise you, you'll feel a lot worse if a situation like that happens to you as an agent, when you feel like you know, would have done more. And there was nothing on Mike. Mike couldn't do anything about it. I mean, the guy was great. I mean, he good health. He was in IUL done, and then boom. So I mean, just protect him.
Yep. Yeah. What happened in that
thank
particular? No, that's good. Yeah. What happened in that case was the guy said, "Well, listen, call me back next month, man. I'm going to have the money. I'm ready to go." And I just couldn't get him to fill out an application. Oddly enough, if he'd filled out the application and then he got murdered, they would have paid the death benefit. But because he didn't fill out that application and he got murdered, no life insurance for him, for his family. Okay. So why we do what we do is really important.